Welcome to the VLearns online class of MCS 023. In today's session, we will continue with the SQL statements. In the previous session, we have already discussed about DDL and DML statements, DDL, DML as well as DQL, that is Data Query Language statements. In today's session, we will discuss about data control language, or you can say DCL commands in SQL. The DCL statements works for the access control and authorization check. There are two discretionary access control statements, that is grant and revoke. Grant command is basically used to provide the privileges to the user for a particular table. You can see the syntax of grant command, that is grant privileges. Privileges can be select, insert, update and delete. Means which type of privilege you want to give to a particular user. With the on clause, you have to specify the table name to users, means the username to whom you want to give the privileges. You can also specify with grant option here. With grant option means if you also giving right to a person or to a user that he can also grant his or her privileges to any other one, then you can write the statement with grant option with grant statement. Similarly, as grant command is used to give the privileges, revoke command is used to take back the privileges from the user. The syntax of revoke command is revoke, then grant option for privileges on table name and from users from which you want to take privileges back. Now, cascade and restrict. There are two keywords. Cascade revokes cascade through a subtree, and restrict revokes succeed only if there is no subtree. You can see the example of grant command, that is grant insert comma delete. It means you are giving privileges, that is insert and delete, on table name, that is flight schedule, to user 1 and user 2, that is u1 and u2 are the username. And if you specify with grant option, it means the u1 and u2 have a right to give their permission of insertion and deletion on FLT schedule to any other user also. Then next example is grant update price. It means you are giving update privileges on price field on FLT schedule to U3. It means U3 is a user to whom you are giving update privileges, but updation can be performed on only one column, that is price column of flight schedule table. Similarly, if you want to take back the privileges given to a particular user, then you can use revoke command, that is revoke grant option for delete. Means if you want to take back the delete privileges for the user, then you have to specify revoke grant option for then privilege name, that is delete, on file table name, that is FLT schedule, and from username from whom you want to take back the privilege. Similarly, revoke delete, you can also specify directly revoke delete, revoke then privilege name on table name and from user, cascade, or you can also specify restrict. But if you specify restrict, then the revoke succeed only if there is no subtree. This is the authorization control by using the grant and revoke command, and it comes under the categories of DCL statement, that is data control language or transaction control language. Now the next statement is, or the next topic is transaction. Transaction means a collection of DML statements which form a logical unit of work for a particular application. That is, all the operation of a transaction must be completed or non-completed so that data remains in a consistent state for the application. For example, if there is a processing of transfer of money between bank account, then both the withdrawal of money from one account and the deposit of money into another account must be performed. Means if there is any transaction, then all operation must be performed or none of the operation can be performed. Means data should be in consistent state before starting the transaction or after the completion of a transaction. Now the database transactions can be implicit or explicit. Explicit means which consists of set of DML statements. DML means insertion, updation, deletion statement that make one consistent change to the data. Or it can be controlled by commit, save point and rollback statements. Now what is the meaning of commit, save point and rollback statement? Commit is used to save the changes to that particular point where you mark the save point, and rollback is a kind of undo statement. Means if you want to revert back all the steps that you have performed in a transaction, then you can use the rollback statements. Now implicit transactions are performed automatically by the DBMS. For example, the DDL statements like create, alter and drop statement, and DCL statements like grant and revoke statements comes under the category of implicit transactions. Now, if we talk about database transactions, then transaction begins when first executable SQL statement is executed. Means whenever you give any first SQL statement and whenever the SQL statement is executed, then the transaction begins and transaction ends with any of the following events. It can be either commit or rollback issued. There can be DDL or DCL statement issues that automatically commit or save the transaction. User exit, if the user exits from the transaction, then the transaction going to an end, and the system crashes. If the system crashes, then the transaction goes to an end. And after one transaction ends, a new transaction starts automatically with the next SQL statement. Now, what are the advantages of using the transactions? The first advantage is it ensures the data consistency. It groups logically related operation into one unit known as transaction, and it also allows the preview of data changes before making the changes permanent. And if you are able to see the preview of the data changes before making the data changes permanent, then you can easily alter the changes according to your requirement. Now you can see the use of commit, rollback and save point statement. Now save point is not considered as a standard SQL. This is a transaction in which insertion, updation, insertion and deletion is performed. Now commit, save point A, save point B. It means at this step there is a commit point. Means whenever you apply commit, then you cannot, after apply commit, you cannot roll back it or you cannot undo it. Then this is save point A and this one is save point B. Now whenever you perform rollback operation, that is undo operation, means if you perform deletion operation and if you want to undo your deletion operation, then you can roll back to save point B. It means this is a point, save point B is a point till which you want to perform the undo operation. Similarly, if you remove the effect of update and insert statement, then you can roll back to the save point A. And if you want to roll back all the transactions, that means If you want to roll back insertion, updation, insertion and deletion also after the commit, then you can give the simple rollback statement without specifying the save point. Now, implicit transaction processing. Implicit transactions automatically commit under the following circumstances: whenever you use a DDL statement, whenever any DCL statement is issued, or it automatically commit and it automatically rollbacks under an abnormal termination of SQL plus or a system failure. Now, if we talk about the states of the data before commit and rollback, you know the difference between commit and rollback. Commit is like making the changes permanent or saving the changes, and rollback means to perform undo operation. And there are two states: the state of data before commit and rollback, and state of data after commit or rollback. State of data at end of last explicit or implicit transaction can be recovered. Current user can issue the current state of the data changed by DML operation, and other user cannot see the result of DML statement of the current user, because commit statement means before applying the commit or before applying rollback, only the current user can review the current state of data changed by the DML operation. Other user cannot see the result until the result is affected on the actual database. The changed rows are logged. Other user cannot change the data within the affected rows. And state of data after commit means data changes made permanent in the database. Means after the commit point, all the data changes made permanent in the database. Now all the user can view the results. Previous state of data is permanently lost, and all the save points are erased, and locks on the affected rows are released. Those rows are available now for the other users to manipulate. Now see committing data. Make changes to data using DML. If you issue update command, that is update employees, set department ID 90 where AMP number is equal to 103. This statement is to update the record of employee having employee number 103, in which you set the department ID equals to 90. It means employee table is updated, and in employee table the employee having the employee number 103 is updated, means the department ID of employee number is set to 90. And after we make commit these changes, that is, if you make these changes to data permanent, then we issue commit command. Then after the commit complete, the update, the result of updation will affect to the actual database. Now the state of data after rollback. Rollback discards all the pending changes. Then state of data at time of last commit or implicit transaction is stored. That is, the current data changes undone and locks are effective rows release. For example, if you perform delete operation on employees table, that is delete from employees, it means if there are total 20 rows, then 20 rows deleted, but if you perform rollback, then rollback will be completed, but you cannot issue rollback statement after issue the commit, because if you issue once commit statement, then the changes will affect to the or changes made permanent to the database. Now rolling back changes to a marker. If you want to create marker in your current transaction, then you can make it the mark for rollback by using the save point statement. Create a marker in a current transaction by using the save point statement. For example, if you issue update, then you issue save point update done. It means one save point is created. After this, you issue insert statement, and if you issue rollback to update done, it means updation rollback undo will be performed till the till this save point named update done. It means rollback will be completed till the specified save point. Now statement level rollback. Now if the single DML statement fails during the execution, then that statement, only that particular statement will be rolled back and all other changes are retained. The user should terminate the transactions explicitly executing a commit or rollback statement if the user wants to commit or roll back a particular set of statement. Now, what is read consistency? Read consistency means which ensures the consistent view of data at all the times, and changes made by one user do not conflict the changes made by other users. Then we can say the data is consistent. And read consistency ensures that on the same data, users do not wait for writers and writers do not wait for readers also. Then we can say the data is read consistent. This is the simple transaction management, or we can say the transaction management or commit, use of commit and rollback statement in a particular transaction execution. Now, the next session is transaction and concurrency management. The topics to be covered under this section are transactions, concurrent transactions, locking protocols, serializable schedules, locks, two-phase locking, deadlock and prevention from deadlock, and optimistic concurrency control. Now, what are the advantages of storing the data in the database? As we already discussed about the advantages of database, advantages of using the database, that is, the database allows sharing of data, the database facilitates the integrity of data, or the database ensures the integrity of data, or by using the database, data redundancy or data duplicacy can be removed. One of the major advantages of storing the data in an integrated repository or a database is to allow the sharing of data to multiple users. That is, several users access the database or perform the transactions at the same time. And concurrent execution of user programs is essential, or you can say necessary, for the better performance of DBMS. As if there is concurrent running of several using programs, then it keeps the proper utilization of CPU. You can say the CPU is utilized with proper time efficiency. Now, what is transaction? Transaction is a unit of work or the set of tasks or any set of work in a database system. And the database system deals with a number of transactions. You can also term the number of transactions or set of transactions as transaction processing system. For example, if we take one example, transaction withdrawal. There is a transaction of withdrawal for withdrawing a particular amount. Begin transaction. If X exists, X is the account number. If X exists, means if account number exists, then it will read X balance. If X balance is greater than the withdrawal amount, then we subtract the withdrawal amount from the X balance and write the X balance. Then we perform commit. Commit means saving the changes or making the changes permanent on the database. Else we will display that the transaction cannot be processed or account does not exist. An end transaction. In this one, you see there are different steps that is performed for a particular transaction. That is, For example, if the account number is 1002, first of all it will check the account balance. If there is any balance, then it will subtract the balance that you want to withdraw. For example, there are 10,000 rupees in an account, and if you want to withdraw 2,000 rupees, then it will subtract 2,000 from 10,000, and the remaining, that is 8,000 amount, is written back to X balance, and the commit will be performed, means the changes will made permanent to the X balance. Otherwise, a message will be displayed that the transaction cannot be processed. This is a transaction in which there are number of steps for performing a transaction. We can see another example also. There is a transaction for transferring the amount from X account to Y account, in which we give three arguments, that is to account number, that is X account number and Y account number, and transfer amount means the amount you want to transfer from one place to, or one account to another account. In this, first of all, we check the availability of both the account. If X and Y both exist, then we read the balance of X. If the balance of X is greater than the transfer amount, then we will deduct the transfer amount from the X account, and we will add this transfer amount to the Y's balance account. And after transferring, we will issue commit statement to make the changes permanent on the database. Otherwise, we will display a message that the balance is not okay, or the balance is not sufficient, and we perform issue the rollback statement, so that all the changes made will be rolled back or will be undo. This is the process of a transaction. Now, next are properties of transaction. There are acid properties of a transaction. You see, transaction is basically a set of logically related operations to perform a unit of work. Now, what are the operation of a transaction? That is data item. You use data item in a transaction. Data item means resources used by two or more transaction, in which you can perform read operation, or you can perform write operation, or you can perform update operation also. Now, to preserve the integrity of the transactions, or to perform the correctness of a transaction, the transaction should satisfy the ACID properties, that is ACID, atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. Now, atomicity. What is the meaning of atomicity? It means it defines a transaction to be a single unit of processing. Means execute all the operation of a transaction including commit. That is, all the transactions operations should be executed all or none of them. For example, if there is a transaction for transferring 500 rupees from A to B, then we begin transaction, we read A, then we subtract 500 from A's account, then we write A. For example, if we see, we begin our transaction after beginning a transaction, we read A, that is A's account, because we want to transfer 500 rupees from A to B. Then we subtract 500 rupees from A. Then we write A, that is 500, or we write A, that is the amount after the deduction of 500 rupees. Then we read B, and we will add 500 rupees to B, and then again we write B, that is the updated amount of B. And after this we give commit. Commit means to make the changes permanent. Now, there may be multiple reasons of failure of a transaction. That can be power failure, software crash, or hardware crash, or you can say disk failure. And if this is a transaction, then according to the atomic property, this transaction should execute either completely or not at all. Means the transaction should be treated as a single unit. It should execute it in a single unit or not at all. Next is consistency. Consistency means, or this property ensures that a complete transaction execution takes a database from one consistent state to another consistent state. Means if the transaction fails, even then the database should come to a consistent state. Means before starting a transaction or after finishing a transaction, the data should be in consistent state according to the consistency property. And the database should be consistent either before and after the execution of the transaction, and recovery possible in all cases, and there should be serializability ensured. And the consistency should be maintained by the user, so transaction is based on integrity. Next is isolation. Isolation, or we can say independence. It means it states that the updation of our transaction should not be visible till they are committed, or if there are two or more transactions executing concurrently, then isolation is going to be handled. For example, if there are two transactions, that is T1 and T2, and in T1 we transfer 500 rupees from A to B, which perform read operation on A, then write operation on A, then read operation on B, and write operation on B. Then if there is second transaction, we display the amount A plus B, that is R2 A, read operation on A and read operation on B. Then the execution sequence of these two transactions is called a schedule, and schedule should be maintained so that the isolation property should not be hampered. Next is durability. Durability is the property which necessitates that once our transaction has committed, then the changes made by it should never be lost because of the subsequent failure. And a transaction is also a basic unit of recovery, and the detail of transaction based recovery can be used for recovering the transaction from any such kind of failure. It states that the database should be able to roll back or recover under any one case of the failure, either update all the data item or none of them. Next is concurrent transactions. Now, what is concurrent transaction? If there are more than one transactions running on the same database, and we can say they are concurrent transaction, and the DBMS must ensure that two or more transactions do not get into each other's way. That is, the transaction of one user does not affect the transaction of other, and even the transaction issued by the same user should not get into the way of each other. Transactions are called concurrent transactions if they are issued on same time and on the same database. And isolation of property of transaction means concurrent execution of two or more transactions should be equal to any serial schedule. Concurrent transactions are simultaneous execution of two or more transactions. Now see, it is in this example, consider a banking application dealing with checking and saving account. A banking transaction T1 for Mr. Sharma moves rupees 100 from his checking account, balance X to his saving account, balance Y, using the transaction T1. Now, in transaction T1, in A step, read X, subtract 100 rupees and write X. And at step B, read Y, add rupees 100 and write Y. This is the transaction. Now, let's suppose an auditor wants to know the total assets of Mr. Sharma. Then he executes the following transaction, that is, to find out the total asset, it will read X, it will read Y, and it will find out the sum of both the values, that is X and Y. Now, suppose both these transactions are issued simultaneously, then the execution of transaction will be mixed, and this is called the schedule. Now, but there are some kinds of some basic problems that can occur with concurrent transactions, that are lost update problems. That is, suppose there are two transactions running simultaneously or concurrently, and what are the causes of concurrent transaction, or what will happen in case of concurrent transaction. For example, you can see here, in transaction 3 and transaction 4, if T3 read the value of X and the value is 10,000, and T4 also reads the value of X, that is 10,000 also. In transaction 3, it subtract 5,000 rupees from 10,000, but in transaction 4, it add 3,000 rupees according to the balance read by this transaction. Now, if the transaction 3 write X and the value of X according to that transaction is 5,000, and according to T4 the value of X is 13,000. Now, after the execution of both the transaction, the value of X is 5,000 and 13,000, means there is a difference between these two values, but according to this transaction, if we see, the correct value should be 10,000 minus 5,000, that is 5,000, plus 3,000, that is 8,000. The correct value should be 8,000. But the problem in case of concurrent transaction is the problem occurred as an update made by T3 has been overwritten by the T4. And the main reason of this problem is the fact that the both transaction read the value of X, that is rupees 10,000 rupees, and there is the update, there is a problem of lost update. Thus one of the two updates have been lost. Next is unrepeatable read. Unrepeatable reads means if any transaction reads a particular value, say X, twice or thrice in its execution. For example, in this there are two transactions T7 and T8, and if there is a value of X, suppose 2,000 rupees, then the T7 reads the value of X, that is 2,000, and T8 updates the value with 3,000. Now the T7 again read the value of X, that is 3,000. Now the value read by the same transaction twice or thrice are different. This is when the inconsistent values are read, because in the first step it reads 2,000 and in the second step it reads 3,000. Thus inconsistent values are read, and as a result of transaction may be in error. Next is dirty read. Dirty read means a transaction read a value which has been updated by a particular transaction, but the updated transaction has not been committed and the particular. Suppose one transaction reads the value which is updated by the previous transaction, and if the previous transaction is not committed or rolled back, then there is a problem of dirty read. For example, in this case, there are two transactions named T9 and T10. T9 update the value of X, that is x old value is 200 and T9 update the value of x with 500 and T10 read the value of x, that is the latest value updated by T9, that is 500. But what happen if the T9 rollback or T9 aborts? Then the value again goes to 200. But what about the T10 transaction? It already reads the value 500 updated by the previous transaction. This is known as the dirty read problem. Next is inconsistent analysis. Inconsistent analysis is as the problem shown in T1 and T2, where two transactions interleave to produce an incorrect result during an analysis. Analysis by the audit is an example of such a problem. And this problem is basically occur when more than one data item are being used for analysis, while the another transaction has modified some of the values and some are yet to be modified. Means some of the values are modified and some are yet to be modified, then this kind of problem occurs. These are the problems of concurrency. Now, next is locking protocol. What are the use of locking mechanism, or why we use locking protocol? This mechanism or this protocol helps to convert a schedule into serializable schedule. And serializable schedule is basically used to resolve the problem of concurrency. And you can say serializable schedule is a schedule if the operations of two transactions conflict with each other, then how to determine that no concurrency related problem have occurred? For this, serializability is developed. According to serializability, it attempts to determine the correctness of schedule. It means the schedule of particular number of transactions is serializable if it is equivalent to some serial schedule of n transaction. Now, what is serializability? Any schedule that produces the same result as a serial schedule is called serializable schedule. For example, the basis for algorithm for serializability is taken from notion of the serial schedule. That is, serial schedule can be, if there are two transactions, then the possible schedule can be T1, T2 or T2 then T1. Similarly, in case of three parallel transactions, the number of possible serial schedules are 3 and that is 3 factorial, that is 6. That is T1, T2, T3, T1, T3, T2 or T2, T1, T3. Similarly, T2, T3, T1, T3, T1, T2 and T3, T2 and T1. Means there can be different schedules according to the number of transactions or according to the number of transactions involved in a particular schedule. And serializability is basically just a test whether a given interleaved schedule is okay or has concurrency related problem. If there are two or more transactions, then the execution sequence of those transactions is called a schedule. Time order execution sequence of two or more transactions are known as schedule. Schedule has two types, that is serial schedule. Serial schedule means after commit one transaction begins other transaction. This is known as serial schedule. For example, if there are two transactions named T1 and T2, then after committing or after completing the first transaction, the second will begin, means at a time one transaction will be active. So in this case, you can say T1 and T2 has serial schedule, and if T2 performs first and T1 performs second, then we say that the serializable schedule is T2 ratio T1. So when one operation completes and other operation starts, so inconsistency comes, means may be wrong result. All the serial schedules are consistent schedule because it execution in serial wise. But the drawback of serializability is it gives less throughput because it wants more response time and less resource utilization is done under the serializability. And to avoid this problem, we go to the concurrent schedule. Concurrent schedule means simultaneous execution of two or more transactions, or we can say interleaved execution also. But to avoid inconsistency in concurrency schedule, we used concurrency control management component. Concurrency control management component allows to execute schedule if it is consistent. That is, no inconsistent schedule is allowed to execute in case of concurrency control management component. Serial means no interleaved execution, but serializable means simultaneous execution. There is a difference between serial schedule, serializable schedule and non-serializable schedule. And the difference between serial, serializable and non-serializable schedule are, in serial schedule there is no interleaved execution, and in serializable schedule interleaved execution is allowed and concurrent schedule is equal to any serial. And in non-serializable schedule interleaved execution is allowed and concurrent schedule is not equal to any serial. Now, we use different types of locks in case of concurrency. Now, locks can be binary lock or multi-mode lock. In binary locking mechanism, there are two states of lock, or there are two states of data item, that is logged or unlocked. Means the items can be, data items can be logged or they can be unlocked. And in multiple mode locks, in this locking type, each data item can be in three states, that is read lock, or you can say shared lock, write lock, or exclusive lock, or unlocked. Now this is the lock sequence, that is schedule lock X, T1 lock X, then T1 again lock Y, it read X and it subtract 100 and it write X. Then again lock X issued by the T2. Now lock X denied as T1 hold the lock. Now that X is already locked by T1, that's why the lock issued by T2 is denied. The transaction T2 waits and the T1 continues. Now the T1 read Y, T1 add 100 to the Y, it writes Y and it unlock X. Now the lock request of T2 on X can now be granted and it can resume by locking X. Now it unlock Y. Now the T2 can lock Y. It means if this is a lock sequence. If one transaction lock a particular data item, then the other one cannot lock it until the first one release the locked item. Now, there are different types of lock, that is shared lock or read lock, and second one is exclusive lock. Shared lock is acquired when a transaction wants to just read the value of the data item. And a shared lock on data item does not allow an exclusive lock to be placed, but it permits any number of shared lock. Means if a particular transaction acquires shared lock on a particular data item, then it means that particular transaction just want to read the value of that particular data item, and it also permits the other data items to place shared lock, but it does not permit any other data items that any other transaction that they means it does not allow the exclusive lock to be placed on that particular item. And exclusive lock means, or exclusive lock is requested by a transaction on a data item that it needs to update. It means whenever an exclusive lock is applied, then no other transaction can place either a shared lock or an exclusive lock on a data item that has been locked in an exclusive mode. It means if a transaction wants to just read a data item, then it can place read lock, and if it wants to perform update operation or write operation on that particular data item, then there must be an issue of exclusive lock. Next is two-phase locking protocol. In two-phase locking protocol, there are two phases. In the first phase is lock acquisition phase. That means the transaction in first phase, if a transaction T wants to read an object, then it needs to obtain a shared lock on it. And if T wants to modify an object, it have to obtain an exclusive lock on it, and no conflicting locks can be granted on a particular transaction, and new locks on item can be acquired, but no lock can be released till all the locks acquired by the transaction are obtained. And phase 2 is the lock release phase, in which the existing locks can be released in any order, but no new lock can be acquired after a lock has been released. Means in the first phase all the locks are acquired, but the locks should not be conflicting locks. Means only a new locks can be acquired on the data item, but a lock cannot be released. And in the second phase is a lock release phase, in which all the existing locks can be released in any order, but no new lock can be acquired after a lock has been released. There are two types of two-phase locking. The basic two-phase locking allows the release of lock at any time after all the locks have been acquired. Means once you acquire all the locks, then you can release the locks at any time. That means we can release the locks in a schedule after we have read the values of Y and Z in a transaction. But what about strict two-phase locking? You can see basic two-phase locking, that is lock acquisition phase and lock release phase. And in strict two-phase locking, to avoid a situation that occurs in basic two-phase locking, the strict two-phase locking graphics depicted as this one. It means first is lock acquisition phase, and all the locks are released in one go. But the basic drawback of strict two-phase locking is that it restricts the concurrency after it lock the item beyond the time it is needed by a transaction, because it releases all the locks at once or in one go. So the items are locked beyond the time they are actually needed by a transaction. But it results in the problem known as deadlock. We see the two-phase locking. That means it works in two phases. That in first phase we acquire the lock, and in second phase we release the lock. But there are some limitations of two-phase locking. That is, two-phase locking is not free from deadlock, or two-phase locking results in the deadlock. Two-phase locking is not free from starvation problem. Two-phase locking may not be free from irrecoverability, and in strict two-phase locking, it is two-phase locking plus every exclusive lock of transaction should hold until the transactions is completed or transaction execution is completed. Now, what is deadlock? Deadlock is a result of through two-phase locking protocol, we can handle the problem of serializability, but there is another problem, that is deadlock. Deadlock occurs because of the following condition. First is mutual exclusion, that is a resource can be locked in exclusive mode by only one transaction at a time, and if one transaction lock a particular resource in exclusive mode, then no other transaction can access it or even read it at that particular time. So this is the cause of deadlock. The next is non-preemptive scheduling, that is a data item can only be unlocked by a transaction that logged it, and no other transaction can unlock it, due to which the other transaction that wants to use that particular resource have to wait for that particular resource. Then partial allocation, our transaction can acquire the locks in a database in a piecemeal fashion, due to which the deadlock occurs. And next is circular waiting, that is transaction lock part of data resources needed and then wait indefinitely to lock the resource currently locked by other transaction, which results in the circular waiting, which results in deadlock also. Now, one of the simplest approach for avoiding deadlock is to acquire all the locks at the start of the transaction, and however this approach restricts concurrency greatly. Also, you may lock some of the items that are not updated by that transaction. The transaction may have if conditions. Thus, better prevention algorithm has been evolved to prevent the deadlock, having the basic logic not to allow circular wait to occur. And this approach roll back some of the transaction instead of letting them wait. Now, how we can prevent the deadlock? We can prevent the deadlock by preventing any of this condition, that is mutual exclusion, non-preemptive locking, partial allocation and circular waiting. That is preventing deadlock in lock based on protocol using the time stamping ordering. And the basic optimistic concurrency control have different phases, that can be read phase, write phase or validate phase. And read phase, a transaction T reads the data item from the database into its private workspace, and write phase, if validation phase is successful, transaction is committed and updations are applied in the database, and in validate phase, checking is performed to confirm whether the read values have changed during the time transaction or not. These are the optimistic concurrency control techniques. And to avoid the deadlock, the simplest approach to avoid the deadlock is two approaches for avoiding a deadlock would be occur all the locks at the start of the transactions, and these are the particular conditions for the deadlock, and if we prevent any of the condition, then we can prevent the deadlock from being occur. This is all about the transaction concurrency and deadlock handling.